Good morning, my brothers and sisters. Welcome to episode 37. We are in a chronological walk of Jesus' life, and specifically we're dealing with the Passion right now. So we're on the early morning hours of Good Friday, and we're going to hear about Jesus as he enters phase 2 of his Jewish trial. Here we go. It's from Matthew chapter 26, and we're going to start at verse 57. Then those who had seized Jesus led him to Caiaphas, the high priest, where the scribes and elders had gathered. They probably rousted him out of bed, actually. And Peter was following them at a distance as far as the courtyard of the high priest. And going inside, he sat with the guards to see the end. And we'll get to Peter another day here. Now the chief priests and the whole council, or at least 23 out of the 70, because that's what you needed for a quorum, were seeking false testimony against Jesus that they might put him to death. But they found none, though many false witnesses came forward. At last, 2 came forward and said, "This man said, I'm able to destroy the temple of God and rebuild it in 3 days." And the high priest stood up and said, "Have you no answer to make? What is it that these men testify against you?" But Jesus remained silent. That's important for the story. And the high priest said to him, "I adjure you by the living God, tell us if you are the Christ, the Son of God." And Jesus said to him, "You have said so." In Mark, he actually quotes Jesus as saying, I am the Son of God, the Christ. "But I tell you, from now on, you will see the Son of Man seated at the right hand of the power and coming on the clouds of heaven." That fulfills and identifies him with a prophecy from Daniel chapter 7. Then the high priest tore his robes and said, "He has uttered blasphemy. What further witnesses do we need? You have now heard his blasphemy. What is your judgment?" And he's asking the Sanhedrin this. "He deserves death." And then they spit in his face and struck him, and some slapped him, saying, "Prophesy to us, Christ. Who is it that struck you?" All right, so the when part of this is early morning. The judgment that the Sanhedrin does probably takes place after sunrise. Otherwise, this is an illegal gathering. This starts the night before, after the Garden of Gethsemane, the arrest. They bring him to Anna's house, or Ananias' house, and that's the father-in-law of Caiaphas, who's the actual high priest. So he's arrested by this band, he's taken to Ananias' house, and then he's brought before Caiaphas. And a certain amount of the Sanhedrin, they needed 23 out of 70 to get a quorum, but this is the official Supreme Court of the Jewish people. And they have difficulty, of course, it's the middle of the night, and they don't get very good witnesses. They get these false witnesses. But then Caiaphas gets right to the critical part of the whole story and said, Are you the Christ? Are you the Son of God? Tell us if you are." Jesus says, "I am." And here he says, "You have said so." And then, this is also important, he opens up and identifies from Daniel chapter 7 this great prophecy about the Son of Man. So Jesus identifies and calls up the Old Testament. And here it is from Daniel chapter 7, verse 13. "I saw in the night visions, and behold, with the clouds of heaven, there came one like a son of man. And he came to the Ancient of Days and was presented before him. And to him was given dominion and glory and a kingdom, that all peoples, nations, and languages should serve him. His dominion is an everlasting dominion which shall not pass away, and his kingdom one that shall not be destroyed." So Jesus here is basically saying, quoting Daniel chapter 7, verses 13 and 14, a very messianic chapter, and he claims that for himself, identifies that for himself, and that was totally offensive. So the high priest does what high priests do, and he is shocked and calls it blasphemy, and then he tore his robes. Now, this is interesting. If you go to museums, one thing you almost never see is clothing from a long time ago. The reason is it's fragile, it's expensive, it had to be hand-loomed, and so clothing was a big deal back then. And to tear your clothing was, financially ruinous. And so this denoted a great feeling that the high priest had of violation and offense. So when Jesus, first of all, he's silent, just like it says in Isaiah 53, verse 7, he was oppressed, he was afflicted, and he opened not his mouth. So he fulfills a prophecy, and then he claims this prophecy. So appropriately, if you don't believe and yield and submit and repent and agree with what Jesus does, the other alternative is to declare it as blasphemous, unless what Jesus said is true, and Jesus is going to be executed for telling the truth. What if Jesus is right? All right, so the title of this, I think, is that Jesus goes Old Testament on Caiaphas. And he doesn't make an offense. It doesn't make a defense. And in fact, what he does is he makes this great offense. And in fact, he's even offensive in claiming this prophecy from Daniel chapter 7. So he claims the divinity here directly, and then he also claims it indirectly in the sense that he claims this Old Testament prophecy for him. Then there's more suffering for Jesus. It says here he is seized, he's mocked, he's spit on, and then he's struck. Mark says that his face was covered, and then he was struck. So that was even more unpleasant in that's kind of how you get to the who struck you. And then just after this, the guards received him with blows. So the suffering of Jesus continues. And what struck me about this today, this is a very action-based time of the Gospels, but just this determination, this commitment, this fortitude that Jesus is showing us, and in just moments he's going to be formally condemned, probably as soon as the sun peeks its head over the horizon. That's considered the third aspect of Jesus's trial. This is kind of the phase 2 of a 3-phase Jewish trial. Then he goes off to the Romans. So we have Jesus here today, determined, committed, and strong. Thank you for listening.